Okay, then everyone, last little bit of business for me today, which is, to introduce the kind of closing panel. But I just want to, first of all, say I hope you've all had a fantastic day. If you've been in here on the business track, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've been upstairs on the tech track, I hope that's blown your mind as well. Like I say, something a little bit different this year. We're swapping out keynote for a panel, and hopefully from the minds we're going to have out here, we're going to really get to get some of the key themes of the day, some of the key insights distilled right down. And, to run that panel, I'm going to hand back to Jamie, and he's going to introduce everybody else who's with him. So big round of applause, please, for Jamie and the closing panel.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Let's work out where we're all sitting, shall we? There you go. To you. Wow. There's a few of them. Okay, right. So we wanted to talk, the theme we've come up with here is that we want to talk about how do you take this home? You spent the entire day sticking as much in your head as possible, or not. You might have been to a couple of talks and not everything. And part of the issue many people have at these conferences is, how do I make this value for money? I've spent it now, but how do I come back and say that I've got something? And how do I action this and take it to the next level? How do I get something from it, right? So instead of guessing on that, I wanted 3 guests that I could just ask. So we have a wonderful, wonderful mix here. We have Janis here, Managing Director, Look Fabulous Forever. We have Eric, VP of Product at Shipper HQ, and we have Matt, Head of E-Commerce at Graham & Green. So 3 completely different roles, but also wonderfully intertwined, that I think is kind of perfect. So we'll kick it off with a nice, easy one. Janis, we'll start with you and we'll move across. What does success look like to you at a conference like this? If you come to the day, what makes you happy at the end of it?
I think if I've come away inspired in some way, that might be with some really exciting idea. It might be to continue on the path that I'm already on, but I come back with a fresh perspective and new energy. Inspiration.
Great. All right.
Yeah, I would say very much the same. Coming away with some inspiration, maybe some new thinking, and for someone like myself, being able to reconnect with so many people here. I know others feel very much the same, especially in person. So success is really a measure of that. It's really happiness, depending on how you measure it.
Nice. Matt?
From my side, ooh, that's exciting. Well, I mean, perversely, I like to see that people are having the same problems that I am. Because I live in Bristol, and so I'm sort of geographically removed from the community. So seeing that other people, that I'm not alone, that's nice to know. And secondly, taking away actionable stuff. So, I go back to my desk, and something's kind of set itself on fire. And so, I have difficulty implementing kind of nebulous business concepts, but if you give me a thing to do, I've won.
That makes sense. So it's what we termed the Dunkirk spirit. So let me know that I'm not alone, that it's happening to everybody else too, and 2023 wasn't a fluke, didn't just happen, but other people are in pain too.
Yeah, knowing that there's other people in the trenches really helps my morale, I would say.
And when I look at speakers for the conference, I look for that vulnerability, the ability to not say pleasure beach, sandcastles, beautiful, perfect imagery, etc. Did you see that vulnerability today?
I did. I saw some lovely talks, and what really interested me was that none of them were actually about Magento. And I loved that, because I could, these need to be things that any e-commerce business can implement. I mean, the talk from Snowdog blew my mind, because that is something I can take back.
That is a mastery of a topic and a definition.
It was
ultimately.
great.
He is phenomenal at accessibility. The way that he articulates it, breaks it down. Fantastic. 40, 50 points from that talk, right? Absolutely.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Douze points.
Eric, what about yourself? What's your highlight that you've seen? What's the talk that's standing out to you that you're still thinking about now?
Yeah, I would definitely say that Sean's from Lemieux really stood out to me. I'm always drawn to customer stories. I'm always drawn to research. It was well done. I was impressed there was only one horse pun, which was nice. I would have done far more than that. But I really liked the story, and I liked the struggle, kind of like what Matt had said when they had to build the configurator that they did. But yeah, I thought that was really well done. That's the one that stuck out to me.
Coming from a design thinking background yourself, must have appealed pretty well in terms of, I like this approach.
It was. It started off with the data. It started off with the problem before the solution. And while that's easier to say than done, they did that, right? And so it was, yeah, I thought it was really, really well done. I think everybody can kind of take away from, maybe some similar problems at home and kind of within their own workspace that they can attach that to. So yeah, I think it was really well done.
I'm a big fan of the, we tried, we failed, we tried, we failed, we got there, and now we've got this, and here's how we're continuing to do that, right? It's nice that you didn't just arrive at the result, pretend there was no problems. It does happen, but not in good talks, right? Good talks. Janis, what about yourself? What's sticking out? Are you coming away inspired, I suppose, is the first question, and then secondly, what are the things that are sticking out to you?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that really struck me is, I agree with Eric, I loved Sean's talk, and that theme about talking to your customers and asking your customers came up multiple times in the day, and then when we had a customer panel, people were talking about actually how when you've got that data from your customers, it is then you can then leverage that to persuade the stakeholders in your business to make investments. Mm-hmm. So I liked that you had that theme. We then picked up on it again and kind of said, this isn't just, it's there for inspiration, but actually the problem that every one of us faces, and how do you get the rest of the business on board with the projects that you want to do? I felt that was really, that really resonated, and to see that thread kind of come back multiple times was really interesting to see it built on.
I'm glad you saw it. It was well planned. I'm glad, not to take the credit, but speakers do the work, but I'm glad you saw that come together. The digital transformation, what on earth do we do all day when we have everything to do and no time to do it? The data coming in, but then ultimately, do we actually still do the transformation in the first place, right? How do we get it there? What else has stuck out to you, Matt?
I think we discussed this earlier. One thing that I've noticed, and it was a common theme in 4 of the presentations that I saw, and that the Snowdog one was about accessibility, and how about the kind of makeup of the development community didn't match the requirements of the user. And then the talk from Molly about, women in tech, and it's 2024, and yet we still have a gender disparity. And that's not even covering like the intersectionality of kind of race and age, and that came up in the AI talk about how, in original AI, racism was baked in pretty much because of the people who were developing it. And now it was raised like you search for a picture of a woman in her 50s, and it shows you a picture of a woman in her 90s, because ageism is now baked into it. And then ageism came up in your talk, Janis. And I think that's something that has really stuck with me, and I think we need to do better at, is making sure that the community, and the people that come to these conferences, that the people who get up on stage, better reflect the demographics of our user. That's really stuck with me.
I think it's also one where what I see often at other conferences is, you're right, the retailers aren't on stage. The retailers are a pretty big part of the community, but they aren't there. Or they're there, but they're escorted by their agency, a couple of hands behind their back. The microphone's actually in the agency's mouth, not the retailer, right? They're not allowed their own voice. We were all talking about this in terms of the inclusivity of the community in general, and that the community can sometimes feel like it's inclusive for the people already in it. And for retailers, the target isn't there, right? It's the target isn't please come to my community, let's talk, let's open a conversation, etc. And where it is, it might feel like you're the only one, so the pressure's all on you, you've got to make the difference. You were also referencing everything's in London.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I live in, theoretically, the sticks. And so I rarely come to conferences. I am old man e-commerce. Jamie was saying he's been in e-commerce for 15 to 20 years. He is a spring chicken. I am, this will age me, e-commerce mumra. I've been alive older than time. And so I have been to some absolutely shocking conferences in my life. And so I've sort of purposefully withdrawn from them, just because, when you're a retailer, you're sort of thrown to the lions a little bit in terms of merchants that want to work with you. So I have very much withdrawn. And the problem with that is that it is isolating. I don't have this fantastic community to help me. So the weight of the world is on my shoulders. And as I say at the beginning, when you learn that everyone else has the same problems, it sounds bad, but that is a lovely thing to hear.
Janis, do you also see the same?
Yeah, I think it's difficult because you've got to... Representation makes a real difference, but it's got to be more than tokenism. And I think for me personally, there's two strands. One, I have no problem putting my hand up and for myself, but one of the things that I try to do a lot is actually to get other people to put their hands up, to mentor people, everyone who knows me well will know that I've twisted their arm to do a solo talk, to do their first panel, to do those things, and I am incredibly proud of those people who have taken the plunge and done that, because it's not enough for me to say, oh, I'm going to do it, so therefore it's fine. It's like, if I want to change that picture, then I need to encourage as many people from as many different backgrounds as possible. And while it's nice that I've seen more women today, I haven't necessarily seen a lot of people of colour. I would like to see more people with disabilities. I would like to see more people from the queer community. So it's not we've done it, it's a box ticking exercise. It's we can always do better. And I think, you come from the same place, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I can add to that, speaking is terrifying, but it is worth it. So start thinking about what presentation you're going to submit for next year, because I'm not going to get up on stage again. I've had my fill. Someone else can do it. Thanks.
Yeah, I would just say, just building on that, I think, if I'm not sharing too much from behind the scenes, I saw, folks who would invite others to be part of these events. And I think a simple invite is the beginning of something special. And I think that helps with inclusivity. Everybody wants to be invited to something. That's that very first step. And I saw a lot of that today. And so I think it goes back to panels, goes back to talks. And sometimes that's that small door that really helps. So, but I saw a lot of that happening today, which is awesome.
I think, referring to Janis's point there, I had 3 people stop me in the hallway and say, Janis has said, go speak to Jamie, you should do this, please have a conversation. all phenomenally excited, all giddy that, this is there. And I say this in a good way, only a good way. And for me, that source of referrals around, I know this is a good egg, this is a good person, they're going to get on stage and they'll be okay, combined with speaker coaching and everything in the background that we do for newbies, it's the perfect combination, right? But we need more. Please go. We believe you will do it in that community. Everybody's individual communities, not just Magento as an ecosystem, to say, I believe this person could turn this thing into the bigger thing, right? It's how do we do it? How do we get there? Other than wonderful personal networks of each other. Because there's also a risk, of course, that from an organized perspective, we get the same kind of speakers, everybody refers people they like, and we end up with the same lineup, different names. Not the same lineup, but similar topics. How do we bridge that gap? How do we make sure it's inclusive? People are brought in, we're referring, but we are putting that diversity in place too.
So I think one of the things is when I talk to people a lot, they say, oh, I'm not good at public speaking. But you wouldn't say, oh, I'm not good at running a marathon or flying a plane if you'd never put the effort and the training and the practice in that is required to do those things. And public speaking is the same. So I think taking that first step, putting your hand up to be on a panel, which particularly I will say you guys do a really good job of making sure your panelists are properly prepped in advance and all of those things. Put your hand up for a panel. Yes, you will probably find it terrifying, but you will probably come out the other side and say, actually, that was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I would challenge everyone to say, look, yes, you feel uncomfortable. God, the first time I did a panel, I was absolutely terrified, and I had the worst question from the audience ever. I had a really aggressive woman ask me how many boxes on average did subscribers to Birchbox stay for, and I said, I can't share that with you, that's commercially confidential, and she would not let it lie. But I survived it. I came out the other end and I was fine, and I did it again. So
Yep.
you're not going to die, but you have to take that first baby step. It's not something you're just born with the ability to do. It's something you have to try and practice and refine.
If I can add to that, all that matters is that you know your stuff. That's all that really matters. Because, I don't really know what I'm doing. I just get up on stage and tell jokes for 20 minutes. But you're all way cleverer than I am. And so if you can think about what you are good at and weave a story about it, that is all that matters. You don't need to be some fantastic public speaker. You just need to know your stuff.
I think it's starting with a topic that if somebody set you off, you would struggle to stop. And then that's your nucleus, and you just build from there. And if you can get it coherent, and it's not 3 pints down the pub too much, you get there,
If you saw mine, mine was a basic rip-off of Eric's 3-act structure. It literally had 3 acts, with the act 2, where the hero just figures out that he needs to do more. So, read, the 7 basic narratives, and weld what you do to that. Tell a story.
And ultimately, it's not your knowledge, it's your perspective that counts. And everyone has a perspective. You don't have to know everything about a subject. You just have to care about it.
100%. Could not agree more. So coming back to the start of the day, well, actually, let me change perspective. So coming to how do we take this away? How do each of your brains work when it comes to, I should shorten that question, shouldn't I? How do your brains work when it comes to 6 o'clock, okay, I'm staring at quiet, I'm enjoying the quiet versus the loudness of the day. How do you begin to unpick it? Is there a process, or is it more no, it doesn't work that way, never works that way? What nonsense, Jamie. How do you even start unpicking it. Eric, how do you process it? How do you bring it in?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is kind of talking with the people around you. I mean, and I think there are kind of synchronous and asynchronous ways to do so. And so I'll often sit in the audience, often with people I've never met before, and ask them what they thought, what stood out. They may or may not have known that, I was part of the conversation, or it was the keynote. It doesn't matter. And just those conversations, I think, are part of what we do. It's part of our community. And I think asynchronously, there's always a lot of good coverage. I think for me, one thing in particular that I missed this time around were a lot of the technical tracks. They're really, really popular this year. And I was hoping to sit in on those, and my only means of really tapping into those were through social media and talking to others as part of it. And so I think for me, I like to get that full perspective, but I also just kind of like to talk to people in the audience and in the marketplace and such. And I'm sure I'll continue to kind of think through that as I make my way back home later this week. But yeah, there's no process, but I think it's really just taking the time and kind of immersing yourself and thinking about it. And yeah, so but that works for me.
Okay. When we talk about that, the Dunkirk spirit, my favorite phrase of ours when we've been talking about everything here, have you felt that in a good way? Or are you feeling, well, actually, there's a Dunkirk spirit, but there's actually more people who don't know their way out of it than do? Does that make sense?
Well, from my side, I came to this conference with something of a cognitive bias because, yes, I am old man e-commerce. I am also a massive curmudgeon. And so I started the day with thinking, I'm not going to be inspired by anything. I just need a line of code or something. And I came away inspired. I know, shocker, right?
Yeah.
The Snow Dog talk inspired me. Your talk, Janis, I loved it. Because, and this is the thing about these sorts of conferences. As retailers, I mentioned in my presentation, we have to deal with the devil constantly in terms of ad platforms. And it is very rarely covered, this kind of unholy matrimony between the needs for marketing and the technology that underpins it. I think your presentation did a wonderful job of that.
Where do you think that can be flipped on its head in terms of people servicing from the managing director area down? How do you think that can be done the other way? So we're saying how we can service the stakeholders better and everything else, but how do you think teams can come to you better?
I think it comes back to that idea of data. We were talking earlier about customer data, but I think for these kind of events, being able to say, oh, such and such a brand did X and they saw Y impact is always a really, really compelling way to get things signed off. So many times I've got something signed off because, I've just seen a great case study from this brand that did this and this was the impact on their business. It's so easy to get that signed off, more so than, our customers tell us that I want X. Being able to say, X business, grew 10% by doing Y, that kind of data is really, really valuable, and I always really appreciate it when retailers are really willing to share those numbers and those case studies, and that's why I always try when I am giving a presentation to be like, well, what was the actual impact on our business? Because I know that's the thing that people can then take back to their business to make a case for an investment.
Very much. I actually still refer to a presentation I saw from Hilton 15 years ago where they turned off all their brand PPC to see what the effect on their organic was. It wasn't good. And I still refer to that presentation to this day.
I saw the brand Nasket the other week turned off all their product images to see if people would still purchase the products, and they did. It went up by 30%. They were very happy, all the rest of it. Good experiment, right? And I think a good theme throughout both tracks, to be fair today, has been this experiment. Let's fuck it up a little bit, hopefully not too much, but then let's come away with that concrete answer, right? Eric, from your perspective, you started the day about community. You started about, we're in this final act, today's the moment, we've got to do it. This is the launch pad, it's the wrong words. This is the way forward. You've had a 5-year hiatus, essentially, from this event, right? Coming back, did you see it? See it all the way through? Did it let you down? Did you see parts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything that I'd hoped for and more. I mean, for some of the people here, I've not seen for 5, 6, even more years, and so for me, again, it was a bit of a homecoming for this, and so it's great to be back, and I really believe it when I say that we're at the verge of something really, really special. This is our moment in this community, and kind of like what Matt said, and kind of what we talked about at the keynote. There's so much about this community that is well beyond the technology. Our stories, the things that really matter the most have a lot to do with what we do around it and the people that are part of that. And in some ways they may feel may seem fairly basic, but it's true. That's why we're all here. This is why we've had the highest attendance. So 5 years, there's more attendance here than there was 5 years ago, and you can see it, you can feel it. I mean, it was the same theater. You can feel it, and so it's impressive. So yeah, it's great to be back, and it's the beginning, I think, of something special and kind of our next act as a community. And I'm glad that Matt made the reference as well. That's something I noticed as well. There were, I think, people throughout the day would leverage parts of the keynote. The dot mailer one actually leveraged the mobile experience, the mobile numbers as well. And so that's kind of nice to see that happen organically. But yeah, it's been a great day for sure.
Thank you. What about yourself, Matt? You're coming away inspired. You came a week ago. You were saying, "I want to be told how to do it. That's what I want. Give me the directions. Give me the 5 steps. That's what I care about." Now you're coming away saying,
No.
"I am inspired. This is incredible.
180.
Janis is amazing."
Yeah.
What changed?
I mean, this is the interesting thing. I mentioned in my presentation, I professionally spin plates for a living while simultaneously putting out fires. My life is a constant state of triage. It's not good for my health. And so, when you come to these things, I'm very much after the one thing that I can go back to my desk and do. That's sort of important to me. And so I sort of poo-poo these, as I say, nebulous business concepts. But what's been great about today is that there wasn't really much nebulous business concepts. They all had practical applications. And that is not often something that you see at a conference.
Yeah.
There can be a lot of business woo-woo at conferences. And what I really loved about today is that everything had an application. I like that.
One thing we see a lot in the talks, I didn't mention it at the start, so many notes did not get mentioned in that opening. We had 115 applications for talks here, for everything else. And in those that were rejected but were business studies, we did this impact for this, so much of it was not about the lesson of the journey, it was just we achieved it. We did this thing, bang. How have you seen today those steps broken down in terms of these are the kind of things actually I want to see in these talks for you to be? What's the difference maker between those, what I would call them generic just to paint a term, and the ones where you're saying actually that takes it? Is it just as simple as the vulnerability? Or is it as simple as saying they've got a bit of steps and there's a bit of magic, but not so much magic that I can't understand it? What's the thing? What's the thing that's taking it from the average talk to?
I think there's something in a really great talk where you're like, I can see how they did it, and I can see how I could take that framework and apply it to my business no matter how different it is. And I think that's a really good talk. It's specific, but it's got the context that enables you to take that framework and apply it yourself.
Yeah, they're not working on saying, as a 30-year-old male, I specifically had this problem and I specifically solved it. You have to work hard to imagine yourself to be that person. They're painting the picture and the scenery, and you're able to fill that gap in your imagination to say, well, if I just twist it a little bit, that sounds like my Dunkirk again, and I'm on the beach and I'm thinking, okay, I can work my way out. Is that all right?
Very much so. So I have seen many of those, we did this, we got this thing, with very little of the we did this. And it's like, oh, cheers, mate, bully for you. What's that got to do with me? And I'm going to go back to that Snowdog hook, because it was so good. When he said, well, an audit, A, costs a lot of money, B, it is a static point in time. And what he was, I guess, proselytizing was this loop of continuous improvement with all the touch points along it. And that is the thing that is now in my head going, right, I will have that. Thank you very much. That goes in my pocket, and I will do that when I'm at my desk. And that's the sort of thing I need to know.
I think what I like about that talk in particular is it's such a good talk that I've seen over 5, 6, 7 years. And Cuba has done a phenomenal job of iterating that talk consistently. So not just the most recent knowledge, but the practical application of it. And he has mastered that topic, but it has never grown tired. I think I've seen that topic covered 4 or 5 times. Not to focus too much on Cuba, I won't get it to his head too much, but it's a thing to say I can see it twice in the same year and still take away 5 more things, because there's such a bombardment of it, right? Okay, so final question. What have you seen today that you want to see improved upon next year for future conferences that you want to see again and again? Eric, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'll take this one. I think we covered it already a little bit, but I'd love to continue seeing new faces at this conference. We have a lot of perspectives across the community, and I think for us to really hit the stories that matter, the continuous kind of change that's happening in the community. I think what we've done here has been great, but I think continuing to look at new voices, new faces, new perspectives. I think that would be great, and to continue doing so.
Janis, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And thinking about like how do we prep for that now? How do we take from today to this time next year and lay that groundwork now?
I'm a big fan of LinkedIn DMs saying, this person's the one you're thinking about, this is the one right here, get them on your radar. What do you think, Matt?
I haven't discussed this with you, so this will be fun. If you saw my talk, as I say, it is eventually a 20-minute stand-up routine. And in stand-up comedy, there are such things as new act nights and new material nights, where people are encouraged to do what is known as a tight 5, essentially a 5-minute slot. And I'm wondering if it might be possible to almost have a third stream, a new faces stream of shorter slots, just to get more perspectives where people don't have to go, oh my God, I have to go on stage for 20 minutes. And I think that's something I'd like to see.
I just saw a conference that ended with 8 7-minute talks in the last slot, and it just brought the energy back to the day. So, yeah.
Nice. Do you think removing that new speaker label helps, or do you think it's the label itself adds the confidence, adds the ability to the audience to help that new person out?
So in new material nights or new act nights, you know what you're signing up for when you buy a ticket, and you are supportive. You know this is untested material. You give your feedback, but they're doing a thing that you're not doing, so props to them. And I think having that sort of comfy safety blanket label might help.
Okay. Janis? Eric?
No, I'm just saying you can build on this. I mean, this is the kind of community that's going to have your back. They're going to know exactly what's happening here. They're going to be rooting for you along the way. I think this is actually a strength, and so I think that would support that idea very well.
Absolutely. Matt, Eric, Janis, thank you. Thank you for being so fantastic. Thank you for doing double duty, for the love of God. That's twice you've been on the stage today. So thank you very much. I want everybody to go absolutely ballistic and give them all a round of applause. Thank you very much.